Good day. My name is Cherilyn M. Otos, and for today's video, I'm going to be discussing all about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates represent a broad group of substances which include the sugars, starches, gum, and cellulose. The common attributes of carbohydrates are that they contain only the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and that their combustion will yield carbon dioxide plus one or more molecules of water. The simplest carbohydrates are the 3-carbon sugar, which figure importantly in intermediary metabolism. The most complex are the naturally occurring polysaccharides, primarily of plant origin. In the diet of animals and fish, 2 classes of polysaccharides are significant. The first one is structural polysaccharides, which are digestible by herbivore species, such as cellulose, lignan, dextran, mannan, inulin, pentosans, pectic acid, algic acid, agar, and chitin. The second one is the universally digestible polysaccharides, which is starch. Carbohydrates make up 3/4 of the biomass of plants, but are present only in small quantities in the animal body as glycogen, sugar, and their derivatives. Glycogen is often referred to as animal starch because it is not present in plants. Derived monosaccharides such as the sugar acids, amino acid or amino sugars, and the deoxysugars are constituents of all living organisms. Carbohydrates are classified generally according to their degree of complexity. Hence, the free sugars such as glucose and fructose are termed as monosaccharides. On the other hand, sucrose and maltose are disaccharides, and the starches and celluloses are polysaccharides. Carbohydrates of short chain length such as raffinose, stachyhose, and verbascose, which are 3, 4, and 5 sugar polymers, respectively, are classified as oligosaccharides. Pentose. Pentoses are 5-carbon sugars, seldom found in the free state in the nature in plants. They occur in polymeric forms and are collectively known as pentosans. Thus, xylose and arabinoids are the constituents of pentosans present in plant fibers and vegetable gums respectively. As the sugar moieties in nucleic acid and riboflavin, riboase and deoxyriboase are indispensable constituents of the life process. D-riboase has the following chemical structure that is shown in the picture. Hexoses. The hexoses comprise a large group of sugars. Principal among these are glucose, fructose, galactose, and mannose. While glucose and fructose are found free in nature, galactose and mannose occur only in combined form. The hexoses are divided into aldoses and ketoses according to whether they possess aldehydic or ketonic groups. Thus, glucose is an aldose sugar and fructose is a ketose sugar. The presence of asymmetric centers is in all sugar with 3 or more carbon atoms give rise to stereoisomers. Galactose and mannose are stereoisomers of glucose, which theoretically is only one of 16 stereoisomers. Because the ketohexoses only have 3 asymmetric centers, fructose is one of the 8 stereoisomers. The chemical configuration of the 4 hexoses mentioned are as followed. The general phenomenon known as mutarotation is observed in a variety of pentoses and hexoses as well as in certain disaccharides. Carbohydrates, which catalyze the hydrolysis of glycosidic linkage of simple glycosides. Oligosaccharides and polysaccharides often exhibit specificity with regard to substrate configuration. Disaccharides. Disaccharides are condensation products of two molecules of monosaccharides. Sucrose is the predominant disaccharide occurring in the free form and is the principal substance of sugarcane and sugar beet. It is also formed during germination of legume seeds. Other common disaccharides are maltose and lactose. Maltose is a dimer of glucose and the lactose is the copolymer of galactose and glucose. Polysaccharides. The polysaccharides represent a large group of complex carbohydrates which are condensation products of undetermined numbers of sugar molecules. Most polysaccharides are insoluble in water. Upon hydrolysis with acids or enzyme, they eventually yield their constituent monosaccharides. The various subgroups are rather ill-defined and there is a lack of agreement on their classification. Carbohydrates are the most abundant biomolecules on Earth. Oxidation of carbohydrate is the central energy-yielding pathway in the most non-photosynthetic cells. Carbohydrates are polyhydroxy, aldehydes or ketones or substances that yield such compounds on hydrolysis. Carbohydrates have the empirical formula such as CHON. There are three major classes of carbohydrates. The first one is monosaccharides. It consists of a single polyhydroxy, aldehyde, or ketone unit. The most abundant monosaccharide in nature is the 6-carbon sugar diclose, sometimes referred to as dextrose. The second one is the oligosaccharides or oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides consist of short chains of monosaccharide units or residues joined by characteristic linkage called glycosidic bonds. The most abundant are the disaccharides with the two monosaccharides units. The example of this is sucrose or cane sugar. Number 3 is the polysaccharides. The polysaccharides are sugar polymers containing more than 20 or so monosaccharides units, and some have hundreds or thousands of units. The example of this one is starch. Polysaccharides are two types based on their function and composition. Based on function, polysaccharides of two types, storage and structural. The first one is storage polysaccharides, which is starch, and the second one, structural polysaccharide, is cellulose. The general properties of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates act as energy reserves, also store fuels and metabolic intermediates. Ribose and deoxyribose sugars forms the structural frame of the genetic material, which is RNA and DNA. Polysaccharides like cellulose are the structural elements in the walls of bacteria and plants. Carbohydrates are linked to protein and lipids that play important roles in cell interaction. Carbohydrates are organic compounds and they are aldehydes or ketones with many hydroxyl groups. So, biological importance. Carbohydrates are chief energy source. In many animals, there are instant source of energy. Glucose is broken down by glycolysis or Krebs cycle to yield ATP. Glucose is the source of storage of energy. It is stored as glycogen in animals and starch in plants. Stored carbohydrate acts as an energy source instead of proteins. Carbohydrates are intermediates in biosynthesis of fats and proteins. And it is an aid in regulation of nerve tissue and is the energy source for brain. They form structural and protective components like in cell wall of plants and microorganisms. In animals, they are important constituent of connective tissues. They participate in biological transport, cell-cell communication, and activation of growth factors. Carbohydrates that are rich in fiber content help to prevent constipation. Also, they help in modulation of immune system. Lastly, carbohydrate gets associated with lipids and proteins to form surface antigen, receptor molecules, vitamins, and antibiotics. And that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching.